Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Adventures in Advising. My name is Ryan Shekel, and with us, as always, is Matt Markin. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, and always excited for episodes, but especially this one because we were both at the UKAT conference back in April and had a fantastic time, and always got to have a good time chatting with our guest today.
One of the things that I want to share for this recording is I'm on the road. If any of our video watchers will notice, my background's different. And, I was in Houston for a couple different events, and the hotel I'm staying in is doing renovations this morning. So if you catch any noise along the way, bear with us. We appreciate your patience and sticking with us. We always have an opportunity to stop and think about new things, things that are changing, things that are different, to be reflective about those things. And today we have Oscar and David, who've been on the podcast before. Definitely, if you haven't listened to those episodes, go back and find them in our back catalog. But gentlemen, we want to give you a chance to sort of catch us up on what's happening with you. Oscar, it's been a couple years since you're on the podcast, but David was on not too long ago, sort of recapping the UKAT 10th anniversary and stuff. So I'm going to start with Oscar, since we have maybe more to catch up on. What's new in your life? What's going on professionally and stuff that you want to share with our advising community?
Hello to Matt as well. It's really nice to be here, to do this again. It's been a long time. It was really nice seeing you both in London earlier this year, but I think there's too much to catch up with. So I think a highlight professionally is that with a small team of people in Maastricht, we've been working very hard. So I'm in Maastricht University in the Netherlands, and we've been working really hard on getting sort of a large group of people in different roles together to talk about what our shared vision for advising at our institution is, and which culminated into an actual vision and many plans also in progress currently on making that vision more than just a piece of paper. So that the work continues, but it's been really nice. And one of the things I really like about it is that, first of all, that so many people were involved. As I said, it was a small team getting the ball rolling and keeping it sort of going forward, but many people were involved. So I really feel that the vision is not just something that sort of came out of a few people, and because nothing got in the way, all of a sudden became the institutional vision, but really many people were involved. And I like the fact that it has strong elements in it that look at advising as a learning process, which generally I think is really nice. And it also really suits our university. We talk a lot about teaching and learning at our university. We have a sort of a problem-based approach in all of our learning, and people like to talk about education, which may not always be the case, but and everywhere, but sort of we do. And I really like the fact that the way we brought advising into that conversation about teaching and learning sort of seemed to have worked out so well. And there's still a lot that needs to be done, obviously, but that was really a highlight. So that the outcome, but also definitely the whole process, working with so many people, also seeing that much more than expected, I guess, sort of many people actually seem to agree on what they valued about advising. So that was also really nice. We thought, oh, maybe we'll have to convince many of our colleagues in all the roles that are there of this, the old slogan, advising is teaching, sort of never lost any of its value to us, even though we may rephrase it now a little and phrase it differently. But that so many people felt about it the same way was also very uplifting. So that was a very positive thing. A challenge, although one that may sometimes also help us because it's all about showing what the very thing that you do contributes to the overall success of students in institutions. But the context of the institution has definitely changed with political changes that happened in the Netherlands. Currently, not everyone seems to want to prioritize higher education when it comes to government spending as much as we would like it, would like to see it. Still a little bit sort of awaiting the actual impact of that. But we also, in a way, and it's true, we see it as an opportunity and also as an incentive for us in advising to say, okay, then what's what makes us so critically important that we would like to expand on it rather than be the first ones, which may very well be the case, where sort of that received the blow of budget cuts. So that's the short of it. There's much more to talk about, and it wasn't even really short. Sorry.
No need for apologies. It's like I said in the beginning, the opportunity to stop and be reflective about the work that we do, but also the way that our work contributes to these bigger questions of institutional mission and effectiveness, and then in a sort of national and global community and society sense too. Sometimes those are really big pictures, and it's hard to find our place in them. But it's always good to stop and take a look when we're able to, and when maybe it is possibly the best survival strategy. So, David, we talked a little bit. What's new with you in the last few months?
Hi, Ryan. Good to see you again, and Matt, good to see you too. Great to have you both with us at the conference back in April. What's new in a few months? Well, a few months isn't very long, really. It's amazing how quickly a few months passes by. I guess for us, the sort of the higher education sector in the UK is kind of struggling from the things that Oscar was talking about. We have quite a significant financial crisis here in higher education in the UK. We're seeing lots of universities very constrained for their finances, lots of cutbacks in terms of staff. So I think nationally we've lost about 5 to 10% of the teaching staff in the UK, and it's all sectors of staff. So it's just making it harder for universities to operate. We're starting to see things like universities merge. So the operating environment that we're working in is kind of changing. But I'm really pleased to say that UKAT is going from strength to strength. We're continuing to grow our institutional member base. So most of our members gain their membership through their institution. So that's growing. The institutions are still seeing real value in advising, which is great. That's fantastic. And we're seeing more of them engaging with a scheme that we've had it in pilot for about a year now. It's an institutional accreditation scheme. So we've had schemes to accredit individual advisors and their experience for 5 or 6 years now. And then we've moved into this one to accredit the experience of whole institutions. So I'm delighted to say that we've got more and more institutions joining that pilot, and it's rapidly not becoming a pilot and becoming the real thing. So that's great. It's a good problem to have. And I guess the other thing that's new, because you both joined us in London for the conference last April, shameless plug, we have another conference coming up. So these things come around with alarming regularity, and the next one is in Manchester next April, focused on student futures. So we'd love to see both of you and as many of your listeners as possible. That would be fantastic to have you all join us.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to submit a proposal, I think the deadline, they still have time to submit something, right?
They do, Matt. Yes, I think that I'm going from memory here. I think the deadline is the 12th of December. It's certainly in December anyway, so there's plenty of time to submit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for the both of you, there's something called Waypoint, and Waypoint's a new online open access journal hosted by UKAT, focused on student advising practice and research in Europe, at least what I see on the website. So for the both of you, what prompted the creation of this, and why now?
Well, there's a good question. I think maybe the best place to start is with a bit of history, actually, Matt. So UKAT has a mission to enhance advising practice in higher education, and way back in 2017, at the time, UKAT was really thinking about ways it could do that and ways it could increase engagement with scholarship. We knew that there was very little research happening in the UK, so we were keen to try and increase the research capacity around advising in the UK. And we thought, why don't we create a journal? So the idea of creating a journal happened way back then. But at the time, I think we thought about it long and hard and realized how much effort there is in actually bringing a journal to life. And we realized it maybe wasn't the right time to do that. So as some of your listeners may remember, and certainly as Oscar remembers, because Oscar and I were both involved in this, we actually did a special edition of the Frontiers in Education Journal. It was a collaborative international affair, and there were about 5 of us on the editing panel. We had some great articles in that, and we moved on from that in our thinking. And our thinking has changed a little around the notion of scholarship, and Oscar might say a little bit more about that in a moment. But rather than thinking about it in terms of increasing research capacity, we were thinking about something that brings together scholarship and brings that closer to practice. And it just seemed that as our thinking had moved on and other things had changed, our capacity as an organization has changed. We now have some more staff. We had some more resource available that we didn't have back then. We figured it was a good time to revisit this notion of creating a journal. And we wanted to do something that really supported advisors in Europe, that focused on advisors in Europe. And we've worked very closely with LVSR, the Dutch Advising Association that Oscar's associated with. So it was just a natural thing for us to try and do, to work together to try and bring something to life that would benefit advisors in Europe.
Yeah, Oscar, do you want to share a little bit more? Yeah. No, in the sense of that you have a past in publication with a focus on the interplay between scholarship, theory, and practice, the concept of praxis. And I wondered if you could just expand a little bit more, especially for those of us who, when we think about scholarship, we think about the large capital R research format, peer review, and those sorts of double-blinded studies models. So a little bit of your background in the praxis space, but also the why that matters philosophically and professionally as you approach building a new publication.
There's actually maybe two ways of looking at it that come from different angles, but then meet somewhere. And one is, and we have definitely, with various people, including you guys, talked about this before, but and it's getting an old perspective, but still very relevant, I think, is that of the work of Ernest Boyer about scholarship. I think that's really departing from the traditional notion of research and scholarship, asking the question, haven't we, and I mean, this question was asked by Boyer and the people who work with, I think, over 90 years ago now, or roughly, but have we, did we end up defining research in too narrow a fashion? And his answer to that question was yes, but more so, he said we should revisit scholarship, as he said. So this emphasis on research as a rather potentially isolated, and that's exaggerating it, I know, but sort of isolated process of data gathering one way or other, sort of analyzing that and then publishing about it, that felt as if it wasn't even doing justice to more maybe classical notions of what scholarship could be about. So Boyer said, in addition to this very vital process of discovering and generating new knowledge, there are other aspects as well. And one of them is that scholar researchers should concern themselves with the question of what else than satisfying our intellectual curiosity does this new knowledge do for us? How can it be applied? And also, how can it be shared with those who are not member of that small community that's sort of with me doing research on this, but who might still be interested or who might benefit? So two important notions that he brought, I would say, back into scholarship were those of application and of teaching. So that's one thing that when I came across that idea, being fairly active in the world of teaching and advising, sort of somehow sort of stuck with me. The other angle, I think, is what you hear when you go to, for instance, go to conferences like the NACADA conferences or the UKAT conferences, or one conference, sort of a conference that's taking place annually also in Europe that I find it incredibly interesting is the European First Year Experience Conference, which clearly is about the first year experience, but in a very holistic way. So not tied to roles, but to that phenomenon of the first year. But you encounter a lot of people, many of whom are not researchers per se, or by trade, but who approach what they're doing in a way that is very systematic, where they use frameworks, sometimes theory, sometimes just frameworks based on experience, but things that can be consistently applied to what they do, that help them understand new phenomena and situations, help them understand how they can address those, also show them how they can investigate and understand those phenomena better in order to be able to better respond to it. And a lot of that, I think, would never fall under the official sort of heading of research, but it is in its being systematic, grounded. It is very scholarly. Yet many of these people feel very intimidated by the idea of presenting what they know and what they found in platforms that are known as research journals or maybe research conferences. So, and this is changing, fortunately, I think, but sort of many times these people either don't share what they know at all, or sort of fall back on presentations that are very local, maybe, and very contextual. I did this, and I'm proud of it. But this step in between, I did this, and my reason for it was so and so. My understanding of the issue I addressed came about by taking these and these reflective and analytical steps. All of that, gets lost. While, first of all, that doesn't do justice to all the knowledge and expertise that they possess. But also, by not sharing it, you miss out on a potential of a professional exchange, because I think it's a hallmark of professionalism. I think that you do things in such a systematic, structured, methodical way. So, and I think in the world of advising, this has been, and indeed, sort of many attempts have been made, and I think with success in different ways, but to make sure that that kind of expertise isn't stifled by, being intimidated by what research with a big R may represent, and how I may not sort of fit that sort of. And there was going to be another end, but now I lost track of my sentence. But anyways, it's a profession and a field where a lot of that expertise exists, that also can benefit a lot. Also, because another thing is that there may be a reluctance to look at that kind of working, because it may take away some of the personal dedication we give students, for instance, and our work. Isn't it more like a form, sort of like an art form? And I know I shouldn't have said that, Ryan, because that triggers a whole new conversation with you. But so many reasons to want to create a platform where people would feel invited to come and share that expertise, and also feel facilitated and supported. So, which is also why we ended up structuring, for instance, and maybe this is again something that David can talk about, but our review process the way we do. But that's this idea, in short, of scholarship and how we understand that as something that bridges the gap between the strict notion of research on the one hand and professionalism and professional expertise on the other. I think that was really a driving force for us to create Waypoint and structure Waypoint the way we did.
No, I think it definitely can open the door to a lot of possibilities for many folks in higher education and maybe submitting something. And I guess that is a great segue, Oscar, and maybe we'll throw it to David for this question is, the journal emphasizes that practice-based contribution. So, I mean, I guess what does that look like in terms of like submissions, article types, review process?
Yeah, well, Oscar's already alluded to the review process, Matt. And I think what we really want to see the journal being is a community where we're bringing people together. And we want that to be, I guess, as inclusive as possible. And as part of that, we want the process of submitting and making a contribution to be as easy, and we wanted to remove barriers and not be something that puts people off. No matter what your level of expertise, if you have something that's worth saying, we want to hear it, and we want to encourage you and support you in actually being able to do that. So our review process is it's an open review process. It's a dialogic review process. It's not a double-blind process. I think sometimes with blind review, even if you're a seasoned academic writer, you get those reviews back from a reviewer. You've no idea who they are. You just get some written comments, and sometimes they can be, at best, a little harsh. At worst, if you're not used to that kind of writing, it can be the kind of thing that put you off from submitting a journal article altogether. And I think people hide behind those blind reviews sometimes and say things that they might not say if they were in a face-to-face context with somebody. And I think also it's that the written form of communication when you're trying to provide feedback. It doesn't always come across exactly what you meant as the reviewer. In the same way that's why you're reviewing, because the author, what they've written in the manuscript may not come across So you're trying to help. The role of the reviewer should really be to try and help improve the article. So that's why we've gone for this open approach. Both the reviewer and the author know who they are, and we encourage them to have a dialogue, to have a conversation. And we had some great feedback from some of our authors in the inaugural edition about how valuable they found that process of having a conversation with the reviewer. It helped them understand much better what the reviewer's getting at with the comments and the feedback they were giving. And between the two of them, the two parties, they were able to produce an article that was much stronger and much better than the author thought in the first place. So hopefully it's a really supportive and developmental approach for people.
Well, Matt mentioned it a little bit. Given these sort of philosophical positions of the founding of Waypoint and the idea of these ways of understanding scholarship, the scholarship of discovery, of course, but also the scholarship of application, scholarship of synthesis, scholarship of teaching. Waypoint has different article types as well. And could you tell us a little bit about the thinking and the different types of pieces that will show up in the publication?
Yeah.
Yes. No, go for it, Oscar. Go for it.
Well, there's definitely room for what you might call the classical research article. So, of course, particularly I think in the British context, where many people who are in an advising or in a personal tutor role are also academics, for some it may actually be sort of the format, at least, they feel most comfortable with, even though in quite a few cases it might still be that the topic, the subject matter, is new for them because their own academic discipline may be different. But we definitely did not want to exclude that. So switching from an emphasis on scholarship or from an emphasis on research to one on scholarship doesn't exclude the possibility and the desirability actually of great research articles still to be published as well. But in addition to that, we also thought there should be space for other formats indeed. And one of them is the opinion piece, where opinion really should be understood as, I don't want to say educated opinion because that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but sort of well-structured and well-reasoned for opinion. So that the rationale for an opinion, for sharing an idea that the authors feel, this matters to us, we want others to think about this as well, doesn't necessarily need to come at the end of a research paper as a conclusion, but we're looking for something that could be called an argument, where you really say there's a few premises, there's a few things that we see or that we know, and we feel that this should be looked at like this, and that it raises a question like that. So in that sense, not to do any injustice to the phenomenon of the blog, for instance, but many blogs may just be the end of that. Say, I think everyone should feel like so. That's not the kind of opinion piece we're looking for. So we look for a rationale. And I think actually the two opinion pieces we have in the current issue are great examples of that, because they really employ literature related to their personal practice, and then say, we've come to a conclusion that we feel is important for everyone, maybe more in how we should think about certain things within advising than how we should do certain things. So that's one thing that we wanted to create a space and a platform for. The other is the synthesis and application. That's somewhat similar, but then I think whereas in the opinion pieces, we're particularly inviting authors to share maybe a more holistic perspective. Sort of the two, I think, in the current issue. One is about raising the question, haven't we become too individualistic in our approach to advising with the students? Aren't we emphasizing too much the what's in it for me kind of individualism sort of in students? And isn't there a lot to that makes a case for bringing it into an awareness and responsibility for the world around us, sort of into advising as a perspective? The other is an entirely different one, which is, as part of your professional growth and development, take into account the unplanned encounters and epiphanies you may have in interacting with students, and take time to reflect on those as well. don't only follow the formal path in your professional development, but there's actually a lot of stuff happening in your daily practice that is worth pausing for afterwards, actually. What happened here? So neither one is an immediate sort of, maybe the second one a little bit, but sort of advises sort of, or doesn't offer a model for application, but it's more sort of a suggestion to think about your profession in a certain way. And the synthesis and application articles more go towards this: what could you do? Where the author or the authors could say, we've put a few theories next to each other, and we saw that actually they reinforce each other, or combined, they tell us a lot about sort of how we can approach the practice of advising. And I stress two theories here, because again, here we don't expect someone to say, I've done a lot of research and I now give this recommendation. Maybe it's a little bit more, but again, in a well-structured and argued way, an epiphany that someone may have had. So I've always been working with, say, self-determination theory in my teaching, because I also teach. And all of a sudden I realized the applicability to the kind of advising I do and to the kind of advising many people may be doing. And I think it works like this. So those articles, we hope, and I think the current ones do, but hopefully many more to come, also contribute to sort of a professional discourse on advising, without being based on research per se. So,
yeah, I think one of the things to note about the journal is it's an online only journal. So it doesn't have a print publication. And that gives us a lot more latitude to do things differently, to have different kinds of article formats. And we spent a long time as an editorial team thinking about the vision for the journal and what we were trying to achieve and what were the right kind of article format. So Oscar's elaborated the article formats we have there at the moment. That may not be where we eventually end up. That's what we have now. But we know that we wanted to make the journal accessible and to make it accessible to a wider audience than maybe a traditional research journal. And we know that we could do things in new and different and interesting ways. So hopefully, as the journal progresses, we're able to introduce some of those alternative approaches as well. So maybe video-based pieces or multimedia-based pieces or so on. Things that are easier to do online than they are to do in that traditional format. So it's an evolution. This is our starting point. We think this was a really good mix of article formats for the first couple of editions, but we want to see that evolve to make something that is accessible and building that community of sharing professional practice.
With the issue already being out, what's been the feedback so far that you've heard?
I think the feedback has been very positive. We've had lots of really great feedback from people, and we're really pleased to see the usage of the journal. So it's been out there 6 months, and we're averaging about 500 downloads a month, which we think is fantastic for a brand new journal. So if that in itself is feedback, I think that's really positive. So yeah, it seems to be really good, and we know we've got lots of people coming forward saying, "I'd really love to submit an article. I'm preparing an article. Here's an idea." And that's something that we didn't say earlier. We're really happy to work with authors at the stage of an idea before they've even drafted a manuscript. If they've got an idea of something they want to say, we have a little a rubric almost they can complete, a template they can complete to express an idea and come to us with an idea, and then we can start that conversation and that dialogue before they get into the process of creating a manuscript. So yeah, hopefully positive all round.
Yeah, maybe a short anecdote, which just happened the other day, to be honest. I was sort of having a conversation with someone who had done, I thought, remarkable work, bringing together elements of very concrete practice, but also the potential of turning that into a way of reviewing your own practice. So the model to work with students in itself was almost like a review process for the work as an advisor. And we got to talk about publishing about that. And I said, well, there's many places where you can do this. What's your ambition with it? And I thought it was of great quality, also the process that had led up to it. So I suggested a few of the research journals on higher education and teaching and learning. But then this person said, well, that's not really my ambition. And I really hope that people will read this who are going to do something with it. I was actually thinking of Waypoint. So I said, well, okay, I can't guarantee anything, but by all means, submit. So, but I like that because it in a way was an illustration of exactly what it is we hope to accomplish with it. So,
Yeah, I was looking over. Of course, I read it as soon as it came out, and refreshing in preparation for our conversation today. There were case studies as well, which I think is, there's often a conversation when we're talking about working with students or in a sort of programmatic sense or whatever, to strip away the details and to get to some sort of reproducible, transmittable kinds of concepts. But we share a little bit about like the thinking on case study inclusion in the publication, and a little bit more on what that looks like if someone were interested in building a case study for publication.
David is silent, so, and he's giving me a meaningful look. But well, I think again, sort of knowing that we see Waypoint really being right in the middle of on a discourse on practice. You have to acknowledge the fact that on the one hand, we clearly in advising for a long time, so there has been to a certain extent a shared vocabulary. So it's not that no one understands what anybody else is doing or doesn't have the means to communicate it. But we also know that context can vary sort of wildly. So even within my institution, I think we have 6 faculties. There are no 2 faculties where advising is organized exactly the same way. And that's just within one institution. So I think that makes it sort of critical to find a way of extrapolating from those very sort of local contexts and practices something that is still relevant to others. And I think this is where sort of the good case study comes in, where I think the case study does 2 things. It really explains the case really well, but it also sort of shows to the reader, doesn't leave it implicit, sort of what happens in that particular place or what occurs in that particular place is of relevance to others. So that's really the exercise that I think we encourage authors who would consider a case study to do. Also, because it is a wonderful way of having even a better understanding of your own case. If you're asked to look at it through the eyes of someone who is definitely familiar with the sort of the generalities of the field of advising, but not the specifics of where you're working and what you're doing, you're looking at it in a different way yourself. So that even before you publish, you have gained there, I think. But it also means that the fact that you're doing things the way you're doing because you serve a particular population or you do that in a particular context also means that no one else could be interested or could learn something from that. But you'll have to make the effort to communicate that relevance to others. And I think if you do that well, many people who read about your case, about your context, will find that they understand a lot more about it actually, and recognize a lot more about it than initially you thought they would, and they thought they would. Because sometimes you also have this feeling, and I think I can, in the confined space of this podcast, say that this is definitely the case for our faculties, where I've had the fun and privilege to sit together with people from different faculties who came into a meeting, whether it was about education or advising, telling each other, yeah, we do things really differently. And then at the end of the meeting thought and said sometimes, we have a lot in common. So that's a nice sort of side effect that a good case study could also have, that to see those similarities. But yeah, the process of describing a local phenomenon and how you responded to it or how you understand it sort of in ways that makes it relevant to others is meaningful for those others, but also for yourself, I think. So
these are all great suggestions and tips. One thing I do want to get your kind of opinion on is, let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, I feel like this could be something I could submit something for. We talked about the capital R for research. But what if someone feels like I just don't feel like I have the support from my institution or from my supervisor or my department? Any advice that maybe that person might be able to share with their immediate administrators that maybe they can get more support for maybe writing something and submitting?
Well, what I liked about you have your ideas about this too, no doubt, David. But sort of what I liked, for instance, about sort of this encounter I had just the other day with that person I was talking about was that this person was going to was considering writing about something that they were doing as part of their practice, and there might have been a bit of an aha moment also for that person when we talked about, hey, this is actually sort of it's a great way of supporting students on a particular aspect of what you want to do, but it's also a way of reviewing how you're doing this. That brings it closer even to things like sort of quality assurance. And I don't want to say accountability. It's not that I'm always against accountability, but accountability isn't a word that sounds like it instills a lot of inspiration in people. Quality assurance or quality care maybe does, but so once this sort of supposed or this perceived burden of now I have to find time to set up a whole research project has been dispelled a little bit, I think it would be interesting to look for ways to integrate a lot of that work that eventually would go into writing an article in the daily practice one way or other. And I know this is still easier said than done, but if you can, for instance, sort of explain to a supervisor that what you're doing is also a great way of reviewing a certain practice and maybe also putting your institution sort of on the map, which is sometimes also sort of a great thing to do, but that might make a difference. And I think what might help there, and we're definitely very open to the idea of articles being submitted by a group of authors, if that sort of would become a team effort and not just something you do in isolation, which always feels and usually also is even much of a bigger burden in time and effort than if you can do this with a team. So it is a challenge, I think, that has to be sort of acknowledged that it one way or other there will always be elements of the writing process that come on top of the other things you're doing. But if you don't see them as completely separate from the other things you're doing, maybe also as a way of reflecting on your own practice and benefiting from it like that, it might be easier to find the time and also to convince others to let you find a little bit of time. But David, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that entirely, Oscar. I think what you're talking about, we would probably in the UK term it quality enhancement. So enhancing the quality of what you do and taking any sort of opportunity to reflect on your current practice and to think about that in the context of the wider field, of the scholarship of the field, can only serve to enhance what you do. So writing something that might be submitted to the journal and being able to express that kind of reflection in a way that's beneficial to others is definitely beneficial to you too, and hopefully to your institution and your students. So it's not a something that you would do as an end in itself. It's something that would fall out naturally out of that process of, as you say, not being accountable, but taking the opportunity to reflect. And I think maybe one of the things we see in our work with UKAT, we work very closely with our member institutions, and what we hear a lot from institutions a lot of the time is we want to learn from other people. We want to learn from the practice that other institutions have got. We want to share and be part of this community in all sorts of different ways. And I think this is just one of those ways in which you can share and which you can learn from others. And if you've done something that's useful and valuable, other people want to hear about it in the same way that you want to hear about the valuable things that others have done. So where administrators might be wanting themselves to learn from or benefit from the experiences that other institutions have had, then maybe this is a way of paying back. You know, encouraging your own staff to actually contribute is a way of paying back their sort of academic citizenship to the field. And perhaps some of that depends also on who it is who's actually writing. I think we have different authorships who might get involved in writing articles for the journal. Oscar already, I think, alluded to the fact that many of the practitioners of advising in the UK are academic staff. They may have a slightly different sell to their administrators to allow them to actually contribute than maybe somebody who's a professional advisor, a full-time advisor, or in a non-academic role within an institution. So we see that kind of real desire for sharing often coming more out of the non-academic side or the administrative side of the institution. For those who are in academic roles, I think they feel different pressures in the UK, and Oscar can probably describe the situation elsewhere in Europe a bit better than me. But certainly in the UK, there's a lot of pressure. If you are an academic, if you are publishing, it needs to be something that's going to contribute to the research standing, the research prowess of the institution, and the way that the institution is ranked nationally for research. And unfortunately, a journal like Waypoint is not going to do that. So they're unlikely to get that support. They're only ever likely to be encouraged to publish in their own disciplinary field. But what we're really keen to hear from is people who are publishing beyond their disciplinary field, from people who are thinking about advising, because that's something beyond their discipline. So that's a very different sell for them. But I think the people who do get involved also share that real community spirit and wanting to share their knowledge and experience with others to benefit others elsewhere, and that real sort of collegial approach. I think it is a very collegial thing.
Absolutely. And, as we wrap up here, David, you talked a little bit about the intention to grow and to evolve. And I know we're a single issue in, but things are in progress. So where can we find the journal, and what do you look to see in the coming years from Waypoint?
Okay, so you're going to give me a memory test now, aren't you, to remember where you find the journal in the the web address. The journal, you can find all the details at journal.ucat.ac.uk, or on the UKAT website. There's a page on the UKAT website, and I can't remember the address off the top of my head, but if you go on the main UKAT website, you'll see a link there for the journal. Yeah, we are only one edition in. Our intention is to produce at least one edition a year in the spring of each year. So we're well underway with the creation of the second edition now. We've got a good number of contributions, which is fantastic, but always space to receive more. We are hoping and intending that from this point onwards, it's going to be a rolling publication process. So as soon as an article is complete and accepted for publication, it will appear online, and then every year we'll collate an edition. So that's also one of the benefits of the online only approach. And if we get enough contributions and we can move it to more than once a year, we'd be delighted to do so. So yeah, watch this space, I think.
Well, fantastic, Oscar and David. Thanks so much for joining us. We're super excited. We'll watch Waypoint's career with much interest. And we appreciate the time you spent talking with us today.
I just saw that if you simply Google UKAT Waypoint, it gets you straight to Waypoint too.
Of course, always recommending we use our tools. Thanks, Oscar.